Kia ora, good evening. Queenstown Airport will provide homeowners near the ever-expanding airport with financial assistance to help them insulate their homes from aircraft noise.
The plan will see 150 homeowners receive the assistance following the ratification of a new noise management plan by the airport. The plan details how the airport will liaise with the community and financially assist homeowners with acoustic insulation and mechanical ventilation costs to ensure their inside noise remains within acceptable levels. Queenstown Airport Company Chief Executive Scott Patterson says the company are offering to pay the full costs of insulation and ventilation in existing homes for those living closest to the airport in what is being referred to as the inner noise sector, coloured red. And for those living further out in the mid-noise sector, coloured orange, the airport will cover 75% of the costs of ventilation. No assistance will be offered to houses in the green or outer noise sector. The airport company will hold a public drop-in information session on the 12th of March.
Several fire service volunteers were called to a house fire last night at 11 p.m. on Raceway Lane in Charlton near Gore. Gore's Deputy Chief Fire Officer reported when firefighters arrived, the garage and the south side of the structure were well involved in the blaze. The two occupants were clear of the structure when emergency services arrived on the scene. There were 4 units committed to fighting the blaze, 2 from Gore and 1 each from Pokarau and Mataura. A tanker unit from Gore was also required. The fire is believed to have started in the garage. A fire service investigation of the cause is underway. The New Zealand Navy HMNZS Wellington has been forced to seek shelter after encountering hurricane-force winds and 14-metre swells in the Southern Ocean.
Offshore patrol vessel HMNZS Wellington, with 80 people on board, including Conservation Minister Dr Nick Smith, as part of a scientific expedition to the sub-Antarctic islands. The vessel departed Bluff last Sunday. Ship's Captain Lieutenant Commander Phil Rowe described the sea conditions on Monday as some of the most intense he had ever seen, saying they were probably the highest seas he'd seen in his 28-year naval career. The swells reached as high as 14 metres and winds as high as 70 knots. The ship last night anchored in a bay at Stewart Island, where repairs were carried out on minor damage. The expedition is expected to continue on an amended schedule and will leave for Campbell Island this evening. It's understood Conservation Minister Nick Smith is handling the adverse conditions well. Wellington is expected back in Bluff Harbour on the 6th of March.
Southland EPMU organiser Trevor Hobbs says his union wants more than just a lift in the minimum wage from $13.75 to $14.25. He says what's needed is the minimum wage set as the living wage of $18.80. Hunter Andrews asked him for his thoughts earlier today.
I guess the view of our union is that anybody on that sort of money appreciates any increase they can get, but we feel that the minimum living wage has been well researched and we should be moving towards that figure of $18.80 as the minimum living wage.
There would be a lot of businesses that would struggle, though, small businesses that would struggle to lift their pay rates that high.
Well, yes and no, and I mean nobody's expecting it to be achieved in one hit. I said we should be moving towards it. There's all sorts of problems arising in New Zealand because of the gap between the haves and the have-nots. And I mean, we have to address it. Otherwise, where are we heading?
You couldn't say that the government's neglecting the minimum wage. We had a same increase about a year ago as well, so it is on National's mind.
Yes and no. I mean, historically, if you look at the figures over the years, the minimum adult wage has moved greatly more under a Labour government than it ever has under a National government.
The Prime Minister is the most popular politician in the country and the most trusted by a long way. Isn't that an indicator of the way New Zealanders feel?
Well, yes and no. I mean, it all depends on the population that they survey in those polls, doesn't it? I mean, it's playing with figures. At the end of the day, if we had compulsory voting once every 3 years, where everyone that was eligible had to cast their vote, we might get a truer bloody indication. Because the big problem we've got at the moment is there is a lot of people not enrolled, even though it's an offence not to be enrolled. There's a lot of people not enrolled, and there is a lot of enrolled voters that don't take the time to turn out and vote.
After much anticipation, Queen's Drive will reopen to traffic on Sunday afternoon, but caution is required as some traffic lights will be down temporarily. Extreme care is being stressed on Sunday as the Tay Street, Queen's Drive, Alice Road temporary lights are removed and permanent lights are reconfigured. There will also be new lights at the Don Street, Queen's Drive intersection, but it's expected to take several days to make sure all traffic lights are running in an efficient sequence for optimum traffic flows. Intersections on Doon Street will also revert to their previous configuration and extra care is urged. The four-stage $7.9 million project is expected to be fully completed, excluding Yarrow Street, in a fortnight. Meanwhile, road and drainage works continue on the eastbound carriageway on Deep Tweed Street between Alice Road and Clyde Street. Work includes upgrading stormwater mains, road foundation reconstruction and asphalting. Stay with us. Still to come, a fundraising city librarian gets the chop and the humble potato proves its worth. Welcome back. A city librarian bravely had her head shaved today to raise money for the Relay for Life. Alison Fraser of Invercargill was in her daughter's hands as she had her bob shaved off to a very short crew cut. Hairdresser Sophie Herbert was in charge of scissors and clippers at lunchtime today as a crowd of supporters eagerly watched. Supporting the Cancer Society is something close to both their hearts, with Sophie being a cancer survivor. And staying with the family theme, another parent and daughter team, Dave and Stacey Shepherd, provided live entertainment during the event. Library staff have been raising funds through baking and were in full support of Alison's offer to shave her hair.
About a month ago we were looking for fundraising ideas and it just popped into my mind and out of my mouth and people latched onto it and it's grown and we've raised quite a good amount of money.
And because you've done it before, not so much of a fear for you to do it again?
Fear didn't really come into it. It's just something small that I can do. The Cancer Society do so much good work, anything that we can do to help them.
You look terrific. You had lovely hair before, but you look fantastic with very short hair too.
Thank you.
Have you ever done anything like this before?
I have actually. 4 years ago when Sophie lost her hair when she's undergoing chemotherapy, on the spur of the moment I shaved it off. But this time I thought good opportunity to raise some money while doing the same thing.
So what have you been doing to raise money?
The library novel lovers team have been doing lots of fundraising, baking, all sorts of things, and I thought this is one way that I could contribute.
So your daughter is the one that's actually given you the haircut today. How did she feel about that, do you think?
I think she was quite happy to do it. I wouldn't have let anybody else do it.
4 years ago, I had Hodgkin's lymphoma. Had treatment and yeah, all good.
So this is one way that you can be involved in the Cancer Society and supporting them going forward as well?
Yep, definitely. Yep.
And Dimensions Hair Studio, are they doing anything else?
Yep, we are in the Relay for Life on Saturday too, so yeah, we've had our bucket at work doing our little bit.
A team of how many down at the Relay?
A team of 10, so there's 4 hairdressers there and we're all having partners or friends or family coming down and help us do it too. Yeah.
Would you like to see more people doing this type of thing?
Yeah, I think it's all for a good cause and it's, yeah, the little part that you can do that makes a big difference. Yeah.
Stage 1 of the Around the Mountain Cycle Trail is set for a June opening, more than 7 months after its original deadline. The Southland District Council is still working on the 81-kilometre stretch of Stage 1, which runs from Kingston to Walter Peak. Several sections are already complete and tenders are out for the building of bridges to link finished sections. Council Services and Assets Group Manager Ian Marshall says motorbikes, camper vans, horses and dogs are prohibited from the trail and asked public to call Council on 0800 732 732 if any are spotted. Stage 2 of the trail from Mossburn to Walter Peak is also being worked on, but funders are yet to be confirmed. The Around the Mountain Cycle Trail was announced by government as a quick start project over 5 years ago in the hope of stimulating the economy by creating jobs and attracting tourists. 4 giant timber viaducts built nearly a century ago in the rugged Waitutu forest are to be restored in an agreement between the Department of Conservation, the Southland District Council and the Port Craig Viaducts Trust. The Department of Conservation has pledged $160,000 towards the $500,000 repair bill, with the rest coming from the Port Craig Viaducts Trust and the Southland District Council. Port Craig's Viaduct Trust Secretary Steve Canny says the commitments of funds from the Department of Conservation is most welcome.
Work in 1994 was just to put them into a holding pattern. 1999 there was a substantial amount of work undertaken, particularly on the Perseverance, but not only the Perseverance, the Edward and Sandhill as well. And really the latest piece of work that's been undertaken is really to evaluate the current state of the viaducts and to also set down a path of a major restoration, probably the major restoration.
Which takes us to where we are, that $160,000. It's about a third of the way there?
Yeah, look, there's 2 pieces of work. One is the ultimate restoration, which is a piece of work around about $3.5 million, quite a substantial piece of work. But we are looking at appealing to international funds for that particular exercise. But in the interim, there is a piece of work that's required to complete a 10-year restoration, which is around $500,000, and the Minister's contribution from the Department of Conservation of $160,000 is the first step in what will be a 3-way share between the Council, SDC I should say, the Trust and Department of Conservation.
How important are the viaducts? Why do you think we should keep them?
Well, the viaducts themselves are unique in the world, apart from the fact that the Perseverance is the largest remaining wooden viaduct of its type in the world. The precinct of 4 remaining viaducts there's no other location where that can be found. That's fairly significant.
And materials employed, will you be using native timber? I presume they were made out of native timber.
No, they were made out of imported Australian hardwood, and the structures themselves, when they were built in the early to late 20s, were only expected to last 20 to 25 years. And so you can imagine we're almost a century later and we're looking at quite a serious piece of work. So in actual fact, the undertakings of the 1990s have extended the life quite considerably. So we are contemplating at present the materials and the type of restoration and what structures will be prioritised, but we haven't made that decision yet. We need to talk to all the stakeholders around that.
What sort of time frame are we looking at? Is something work urgently required, or can it hold off for a year or so?
No, work isn't urgently required. The last exercise on the Edwin Burn dealt with the immediate challenge. However, we are contemplating undertaking this work within the next 12-month period.
New Zealand has a new leader in the vegetable stakes, with the humble potato taking top spot as New Zealand's #1 vegetable. Kiwis have the pip with tomatoes, now in second place to spuds, according to Statistics New Zealand's latest household economic survey. In the year to June 2013, we brought over $119 million worth of potatoes, while tomatoes purchases reached a close second at $118.6 million. Spending on the top 2 vegetables has increased $10 million since the last survey in 2010. Also jostling for position since 2010, spinach moved from 16th to 12th spot, kumara moved from 8th to 5th, beating carrots, while celery dropped off the top 20, replaced by corn. And that's it from us. Coming up next on Sport, Tom catches up with sport journalist Joseph Romanos. From us, though, the news team, good evening.